Hello everyone and welcome to another Endgame episode with Coach B and masteryourchess.com. In this video, we're going to take a look at the positions that involve a rook versus two separated pawn or disconnected pawns. And these positions involve three types of scenarios. The first scenario, which is the easiest one, is where the king that has the pawn is far away from its pawns, while the other king is next to a pawn and the rook can attack the other one. And in these positions, the player that has the rook will win the game if the opponent cannot use the king to defend any of the pawns. So in this position, white can simply win with rook to f3, attacking the pawn that it's on b3. After something like b2, the rook could go behind the pawn, and after that, he's simply going to be able to capture both pawns and win the game. Coming back from the beginning, I do want to mention that here it would be a terrible mistake if white will capture the pawn on h2 with the king first, because after king to a5 and the rook to f3 attacking the pawn, black is now able to defend the pawn on b3, and after something like king to g2, pawn to b2, rook to f1, preventing that pawn from promoting, king to a3, king to f2, king to a2, king to e2, black will be able to promote his pawn, and then white will have to sacrifice his rook and a draw will be achieved. So coming back from the beginning, always remember to attack the pawn that is closer to your opponent's king and take that pawn first. If your king is next to the other pawn, you will be able to take it at any time. Next, we're going to take a look at the positions where both kings are near the pawns. In these positions, if the king that has the rook is next to the pawn that is far away from the king and the other pawn is close to promoting, then those positions will be drawn. So in this case, the best that white has here is a draw. After something like rook to a7, king to b1, after white takes the pawn on h2 and king to c1, there's not much that white can do to prevent black from achieving a draw. After something rook to c7, the king simply has to move away, let's say king to d2, rook to b7, the king will come next to the pawn. And white cannot make any progress. If he moves the king to g2, after the pawn promotes, white will have to sacrifice the rook and a draw will be achieved. If the king that has the rook is near the pawn that is defended by the opponent king, he is able to win if the opponent's king is on the opposite side of the pawn. The rook is not dragged to stop the other pawn from promoting because it reached the 7th rank. And if he is able to attack the promoting square with the king and rook before the opponent promotes the pawn with the help of his king. These type of positions are not that easy, as many of them look the same but are quite different, as you will see in this video. Since the theory is not so straightforward, you will not find many videos on this topic. The best thing to do is to learn these strategies by watching this video and practice them against the computer to really master the content. So if we look at this position, we could see that black's king is on the left side of the pawn while white's king is on the right side of the pawn. So he is on the opposite side of the pawn. The rook is not dragged to defend the pawn on the h-file as it did not reach the 7th rank. Also, black will need 4 moves to promote the pawn on b4. He's going to need 3 moves moving the pawn, but he's also going to need 1 move with the king to a2 to defend the promoting square. Well, if we look for white is going to need 3 moves with the king to come next to the pawn, and also 1 move to go behind the pawn to attack the promoting square. So white will need 4 moves with the king and rook to be able to attack the promoting square, while black will also need 4 moves to promote. Since white has the move, he is able to win in this case. So let's go ahead and take a look at the correct play. So here, after king to e4, black has 2 options, either to move the pawn on h3 to h2 or to push the pawn to b3. So let's take a look at both of those options. If black moves the pawn to h2, after this, the rook has to go to c1, where he covers the promotion square on h1, but he's also covering the promotion square on b1 for the other pawn. So after something like b3, king to d3, b2 attacking the rook, white can simply move the rook to h1. After king to a2 and king to c2, there's nothing that black can do to stop white from winning the pawn. If black here promotes the pawn, well, here white will simply come and capture it, and after that go after the other pawn. Coming back, if instead of promoting the pawn, black will make a move with the king, let's say king to a3 here, well, after that, white will simply be able to go with the king to b1, stopping the pawn on b2 from promoting, and then take the pawn on h2 and then come and take the pawn on b2, winning the game from here. In this next position, The king that has the rook is on the opposite side of the pawn. However, the rook is dragged to defend the pawn on the h-file as it's on the 7th rank, just one move away from promotion. Therefore, white will not be able to win this game. Here, after something like rook to a7, king could go to b2, and now the rook is not able to cover the promotion square. He's going to have to go attack the pawn on h2 because it's just one move away from promoting. So after this, the rook will have to play to h7, and after king to c1, king to e4, b3, rook will have to take on h2. After b2, the rook will have to sacrifice again, and black will achieve a draw. And also, if white is going to cover the promotion square on c1, the rook will be attacked by the pawn on b4 or by the king on a3 in one move, which means the rook will have to waste another move to cover the promotion square. Therefore, white will actually need 5 moves to be able to cover the promotion square with the king and the rook. So after something like rook to c1, after b3, let's say king to e4, after b2, the rook is attacked and it will have to move again to cover the promotion square. Therefore, black is going to be able to achieve a draw. After king to a2, here white has to take on h2. After rook takes on h2, the pawn is pinned, so king to a1, the rook will have to sacrifice, and now black achieved the draw. Coming back, I just want to mention that after king to a2, if white doesn't take the pawn here with the rook, and he moves something like king to d3, well, now black is going to be able to win, just because he's going to be able to promote, and after the rook will sacrifice and black will take, white will not be able to stop the other pawn from promoting. In this next position, it's white to move, and here the king that has the rook is on the same side of the pawn as the black king. You could see they are both on the right side. Therefore, this position is also a draw. After something like rook to d7, the king can move to e3, rook to c7, attacking the pawn. The king will move back to d3. If white is trying to bring the king closer, let's say king to f4, black will simply march the pawn to c3, and now the white king cannot make any progress towards the pawn as he's being opposed by the king on d3. If he moves something like rook to h7, the pawn will march to c2, and now white has to come behind it not to let it promote. But after king to d2, rook to d7 will not make any progress. King to e2, rook to c7. Black is very happy to repeat this position 3 times and achieve a draw that way. So eventually white will have to make something different, and after something like king to g5, black will simply promote, white will have to sacrifice the rook, and then the game will be drawn. And coming back to the very beginning, I do want to mention that no better is rook to d7, king to e3, and then taking on h5 here will not make any difference. After pawn to c3, rook to c7, king to d2, white cannot make any progress. Attacking the king won't make any progress. He's simply going to move to e2 again. The rook will have to come to c7, and black is simply going to defend the pawn again. And trying to bring the king closer, it's not going to help. After c2, king to f3, the pawn will promote, and the rook will have to sacrifice, achieving a draw. In this next position, if we look at black, we can see that he's going to be able to queen in 3 moves. And he'll take white 3 moves with the king, and also 1 move with the rook, to cover the promotion square. So on the first glance, it looks like black is going to be able to achieve a draw. However, this game will be won by white with correct play, due to the fact that black has a passed pawn on the knight file, and white is able to gain a tempo with the rook to h7 check, forcing the black king in front of its pawn and forcing him to lose another tempo, giving white the tempo that he needs to be able to win. So here the correct play will be rook to a7, after king to b3, king to e4, king to c2, rook to c7 check, king to d2, rook to b7 attacking the pawn again, king to c3, king to e3, and here no matter what black tries, white will be able to win. If he tries to move the pawn to b3, after rook to c7 check, king to b2, king to d2, king to a1, king to c3, pawn to b2, rook to a7 check, king to b1, and rook to b7, black is totally lost. If he moves the pawn on h3, white can take with check, and after the king moves away, white will be able to win the other pawn. And coming back to this position, after white took the opposition, we looked at pawn to b3. However, no better is pawn to h3 here, because after rook to c7 check, king to b2, king can come to d2. After king to a2, rook to a7, king to b2, rook to h7, attacking the pawn on the side, pawn to b3, rook can take on h3, and after king to a2, rook to h1, covering the promotion square, black is totally lost. All he's got is b2, but after king to c2 and black will promote, white will simply capture and be able to win the game from here. And this concludes the lesson for today. Stay tuned for the next video where we're going to take a look at the last type of position where the rook will fight alone against the king and the two separated pawns, as his king is going to be too far away from any of the pawns. As you've seen in this video, these positions are not that trivial, and I encourage you to visit my website masteryourchess.com to practice these positions against the computer to make sure that you've mastered the content. If you liked my video, please subscribe and don't forget to check out my new website masteryourchess.com, where you can learn, practice, test, and master your chess knowledge.